everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be running through Business Central and how you can use Solver in Business Central to create some financial reports. I've got Scott Bennett from Solver to actually walk you through some of those products. So thanks, Scott, for making yourself available.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody.
So I thought what I'll do is we do have a Q&A section. So please, if you've got any questions while we're going through anything, please feel free to ask a question. I'll be monitoring it while Scott does the presentation and shows the product. And we'll stop when the time is right, just for us to answer those. So we'll try and answer them as we go. But we'll definitely, right at the end of the webinar, if there's anything we haven't answered, I'll run through those to try and give you some answers to your questions. I'm just going to go through, I know most of the people that are joining here are Walker Scott customers, but some aren't. So I'm just going to do a very, very quick overview in terms of who Walker Scott is. So then I'll hand it over to Scott, and he'll talk you through Solver, what they're about, the product. So you've got a bit of an idea. But Walker Scott, we've been going for about 15 years now. We've got around 80 staff. We've got offices in Auckland, Wellington, also in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane now. And we primarily are concentrate on Dynamics business applications. So in particular, in the ERP space, we deal with Business Central, finance, and operations. And on the Dynamics CE side, we deploy customer service, field services, pretty much any kind of Dynamics app that sits on the platform, we implement. It was started by the founders, which is John Walker, Blair Scott, and Paul Knox. Blair is the managing director here in New Zealand, based down in Wellington. I'm based down in Auckland, and but Blair runs the Walker Scott side of the business here in New Zealand. If you don't know, so Walker Scott is actually part of the Cloud Collective. So the Cloud Collective is a strategic alliance of 4 leading Microsoft Gold partners, really to address the growing needs of the mid-market. We've got complementary skills and capabilities. So we provide both in-depth expertise across the latest Microsoft technologies and to basically do a complete end-to-end wrap of those cloud services across Microsoft. With all the companies that are part of the Cloud Collective, there's 4 of us. There's probably well over 230 staff, and we've also got a dedicated Microsoft person who looks after us. Those companies, they're called Antares, Arcom, Quorum, and obviously Walker Scott. And this is what they really do. So Antares really concentrates on modern work apps. So if you need anything around Teams, SharePoint, aspects of Copilot at the moment, Antares are really concentrating on that. Arcom are doing a lot of voice, and if you need any got any meeting rooms that need a lot of hardware, which is sort of Microsoft based, that's what Arcom do. And Quorum concentrate on security. And with Walker Scott, we are all about the Dynamics business apps. So Walker Scott, we are a platinum partner of Solver. So what that really means is that we've trained up our staff to use Solver. We've also done a number of implementations, and we can self-serve ourselves. So if there are any demos or we need to deploy Solver, Walker Scott do this internally. And if they, with obviously the support of Solver themselves, but we're quite self-sufficient, and this is the reason why we've got our platinum partnership with Solver. Cool. With that said, I'm going to just hand this over to Scott, and you'll just talk a little bit through who Solver is and the product. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure to be on these webinars with yourself. As John pointed out, Walker Scott are a platinum partner, so one of our key partners across ANZ with some serious capabilities in house. So it's always nice to be on here to demonstrate Solver to their customers. So before we get into the product, I'm just going to take literally a few minutes just to talk you through a little bit about what Solver is and how it all fits together. So Solver is and Luke, we love acronyms in the software space, right? But Solver is a CPM tool. What is that? That's a corporate performance management tool. So what does that mean in real terms? It means all of your financial and operational reporting, all of your budgeting and forecasting, and a place to house all of your enterprise-wide data. Okay, so Solver is a full cloud solution. It's hosted on Microsoft Azure, and it is Microsoft certified. So if you go to AppSource, you'll see that Solver is a Microsoft certified solution and also has preferred solution status for D365 Business Central. That's a really important thing to mention off the bat. So the way this works is we have a connector which allows us to connect Solver to Business Central out of the box. So very quickly we can establish that connection and bring in all of your relevant information from D365 into the Solver data warehouse environment. And once we set that up, you determine how often you want that to update. So it could be you want it to update every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, overnight. It's entirely up to you. What that means is you haven't got to worry about exporting data, dumping data, manipulating data, all of that sort of stuff that maybe you're doing some of within your organization. So once that's set up, all of that data comes in. We can also bring in any other data source as well. So typically what we find is if someone is using D365, maybe they have a third-party payroll system that they want to bring in for reporting and planning purposes. Maybe they're using a CRM solution and they want to bring that information into Solver as well. So we can kind of bring anything in here as part of the solution. I just saw a question pop up. I'm going to quickly take it on because I think I know the answer. I believe the minimum you can do is 15 minutes in terms of the update process, but ultimately it depends on how much data. We're only doing incremental updates, which is great because we're only bringing in any changes to your data, but it does depend how much you have. So if you have a seriously high volume of transactions, maybe you want to set that to 30 minutes or something. But you could actually go for 15 minutes if you want to. I think did I just answer that one, John? I just had a little one pop up. I missed it. You're muted, mate. Sorry.
Just a further comment, but it only updates on the hour, doesn't it?
No. You can set it to update however often you want it, 15, 30, 45 an hour. It's up to you, but ultimately it depends on what sort of volume of data that you have that it needs to bring in. But as I mentioned, it is incremental updates, so therefore it only brings across any changes to your data. Okay, I just want to quickly answer that one, but maybe I'll save them to the end, or else I'm going to.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so any data coming into the environment, once it's in there, you can do any type of reporting off the back of it. We use Excel as the design layer. Okay, so we can leverage any existing Excel skills within the finance department, but everyone consumes the reports via the web environment. It's that kind of best of both worlds. Okay, so any type of reporting and also any type of planning, budgeting, forecasting. You can set up workflows with review and approval processes, assumptions, all of that kind of stuff that you're probably doing today in Excel, which comes with a number of challenges. Solver gives you a way of streamlining that and keeping it all under the one roof as part of the application. Finally, if you also want to build out advanced dashboard solutions, visualizations, you might want to leverage something like Power BI, at which point Solver has a certified connector, which allows you to connect in to Power BI to save you having to do all of that stuff around data integration, etc. with Power BI. You can pretty much set up that connector and get going with dashboarding templates, create your own however you want to do it. So kind of in a nutshell, that's how it all comes together. I'm going to show you as well very shortly some of the reports available within our marketplace. This is a huge advantage for D365 Business Central customers. We have a template marketplace with right now a couple of hundred reports, planning forms, which are available for you out of the box. I'm going to show you some of them today as well. Thanks, John. The other key advantage here as well as part of Solver is, as you would expect, it is a subscription-based solution. But the key difference with our application is you get everything. Okay, and you might, if you can just click that ahead for me, John, you get absolutely everything. You may not want to use everything, but you get everything as part of the licensing. Okay, so all of our reporting, all of our planning, all of our data warehouse, it's all inclusive. It is a simplified user-based licensing model, which keeps it very transparent and very easy to work with. Okay, and then finally, as you would expect, product's been around for a long time. We've got over 3,000 customers globally using Solver solutions. And you won't be surprised to see we pick up a number of industry awards. This is just an outline of some of our awards on the G2 platform, and you can see we've won in some of those key areas that you can see on the screen. Okay, thank you, John.
Cool.
On that note, I'm going to jump into the product and cover off a few things for everybody. So just share my screen. Please confirm, John, if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay, great stuff. So what you can see here is, and I'm not going to show, we don't have the time today to show you everything, nor do we want to show you everything you do with the product, because as you would expect, there is heaps, but we want to just focus on a few key areas to whet the appetite, if you like, around both reporting and planning. So you can see that right now I'm logged in via the web. You can access Solver via any browser or any device. It's entirely up to you. And what you can see as part of this is I have a whole host of options available to me down the left-hand side of the screen. Got a reporting section, planning section, of course, some administrative functions as well, because I'm playing a power user in this environment. But what you'll notice, first of all, is if I click over into my data warehouse, you'll see this is all of my data. So if you look at this from the perspective of your own organizations, this would be your GL information coming in from Business Central, your general ledger transactional information that you might want to bring in. Maybe you want to bring your AP and AR information in here as well, not a problem. You'll see I've got third-party payroll coming in, and I believe I've also got some CRM information coming in as well. So as I mentioned earlier, once these connectors are set up, the information comes in on a scheduled basis. You'll notice it'll bring across all of the dimensions that you have set up within Business Central. And you can also add as many as you want, additional ones within Solver as well. So you can create as many additional dimensions, hierarchical tree structures, however you want to do it for report and planning purposes. Okay, so just thought I'd show that to kick things off. Not going to get into too much detail on this. Of course, John and the Walker Scott team can get into a deeper dive here if of interest, but I just wanted to show you that it's all pre-built, it's all ready to go, and it allows you to bring all of that information in very, very quickly using a quick start connector for D365. So if I click over here, you'll see I have within my environment a number of reports available to me. As I mentioned from the outset, you can do any type of financial and operational reporting. And because we use Excel as a design layer, you can have these reports look however you want, okay? So down the left, I've got my categories and folders. So if I go into Scott's reports, see, these are some of my favorite reports I'll typically work with. For instance, I can open up this operating expense analysis if I want to, okay, which coincidentally is from our marketplace, which I'll show you shortly. And you can see I've got a nice clean report there I can work with, which is taking advantage of some charting and sort of static dashboard capabilities within Solver. And I've also got a nice clean looking profit and loss variance report over here, which is worth spending a couple of minutes on. So you can see this is pretty clean. Again, you can have this report look however you want. It's entirely up to you. I can expand this out if I want to. So if I want to, for instance, take a look at my actuals month to month, and then my sort of versus my year-to-date budget, I can do that. I can take advantage of advanced grouping functionality, so I can easily build this kind of thing into my report. But what you'll notice as well is going through here, I can also drill down on any of these numbers. So if I want to look at this services revenue number, I can drill all the way down into the transactional detail that sits behind that services revenue number, okay? What I can also do as well, again, everyone on the call, I believe, is using Business Central. So the advantage there, you can even have a column here which has a link, which will link to the posted invoice as an example. So you can actually look through this and you go, great, click through, it will open up Business Central and show you that printed invoice, just as an example. Okay, so all from within your report. And what you'll notice at the top is I have these parameters. You can create as many as you want here. I've just got entity. So for instance, I could run this report for one entity or multiple, right? I can choose what financial period I want to use for this report. And interestingly, a little bit of a kind of trailer for what's coming up later is I can choose a scenario. So if I'm doing my budgeting and forecasting in here, Solver gives you the ability to store an unlimited number of budget and forecast versions. So you could actually set these up as scenarios. So you could run this P&L against budget, worst case, best case, realistic, forecast ABC, however you want to do it. All right. So it gives you the ability to do that sort of scenario planning on the fly. But you could just as easily have here, depending on your type of business, you could have department, sales region. If you're a not-for-profit, could be program, location. You know, you could come up with as many filters, parameters as you like, and have these as part of this report. You can also collate comments. This is an interesting one we hear a lot from customers. If it is that you're soliciting feedback from department managers, program managers on a monthly basis, this is a good way to do it because you can actually have it so that your department managers, etc., can enter comments directly into the report, and those comments are stored into the data warehouse. So it's in a secure environment, and you can come back to it later. You can see who said what and when they said it. You can do it a couple of, this is one way of having line item kind of commentary, but what you could do is you could create a whole template if you wanted to as part of this. You know, you can create whatever type of comment you want and actually have that. So it gives them a little bit more real estate and kind of it illustrates to where each person should put their commentary. So there's a few different ways of doing it, but the idea is it streamlines that whole reporting and feedback process. Okay. Now I mentioned earlier that the design element of this happens in Excel, which makes it a lot easier, certainly for the finance team. But what you also have is this marketplace. So if you're interested following today's session, if you go to solverglobal.com and then select template marketplace, you will see we've got a couple of hundred reports available for D365 Business Central customers to use out of the box. Okay. And you can see, think of a report, chances are we've got it. The Walker Scott team will typically include some time in a rollout to create some custom reports for you because chances are there'll be some specific things you need as part of your business. But for instance, you could go through here and you could look at a report and you could say, yeah, that looks like a good report. I'm going to zoom in on that, take a closer look. You might look at the report and say, that's great. It gives me kind of 80% of what I need. There's nothing stopping you tweaking this report, putting your own branding on it, adding some additional information. If it's not giving you everything you need, nothing stopping you doing that. There's a description of what the report can do and you can add it into your environment. Okay, but just something that you can do a takeaway there if you're interested after today's session. And the way that edit and design element happens, as I mentioned, is in Excel. So I could come in here and only typically power users are going to do this, right? Everyone's going to be happy viewing and consuming these reports via the web, but power users are going to be able to make changes. So you could come in here and just click edit and report designer. And what Solver's going to do is it's going to launch Excel. It's going to kick in the design tool, and you'll see that this report, you'll see it's in its design form, and you'll notice this is Excel, right? Yes, I have some Solver reporting added menus and things as you would expect, but this is Excel that we're working with. Okay, so you can leverage those existing skill sets that you'll typically have in the finance department. Key difference here, all that data I quickly showed you earlier is available here for your reporting. So for instance, when this report was created, it was a case of general ledger. Yep, I want my account dimension. I'm going to drag that into C13. Now I want my account description attribute. I'm going to drag that into D13, right? This is a simple variance formula. Okay, so again, we're leveraging the knowledge that you'll typically have in Excel.
But if I wanted to bring in an additional source, I could go to my payroll. I want to bring in payroll information. Maybe I want some Google Analytics information I've got coming in here, right? I can start to build up my report. Plus, I have a whole host of other features from within Solver that make life easier, like predefined periods and all sorts of stuff, different layouts, etc., to make life easier. So if somebody wanted to change something, if one of your department managers came to you and said, hey, this report's not giving me what I want, I don't like the way it looks, well, in the interest of time, I'm going to make a quick change. It's going to be a really simple one, just to illustrate how this would typically work. So I could say, yeah, fair enough, it's not in line with our branding. I'm going to make that change. As a power user now, I can go into the Run tab, and you'll all notice that this remembered the parameters that I last selected when I ran this in the web. So I can run it. It's going to get out to the data warehouse. If there's been one of them updates, great, then that will be reflected in my report. As I mentioned, incremental updates on a scheduled basis. So here is my report. I'm happy with it. I've made my color change in line with branding. All I need to do at this point is hit my design tab. I hit save, tells me it's been uploaded. I close Excel, and you'll notice instantly in the web environment, it's picked up the changes. I can refresh it. I can rerun my report, and any changes that I made to that report will now be available to me within the web environment. Okay, and those changes, as I've said, very simple. I just change the color. So at this point, I can go publish, put a comment on here if I want to. I'm not going to in this case, but I'm going to publish it. And then at this point, I can share it with my team by role or user. And here's where it gets even cooler, because what will happen now is they'll get a notification, but the chances are these recipients are not going to be living in Solver. So they can also get an email and it'll say, Scott just shared this profit and loss report with you. Click this link. They'll click the link. They can use their Microsoft credentials to log in to Solver. Again, it's about all making it easier and about how it's all intertwined with the Microsoft solution. Put in their credentials and it will take them into the P&L report. But the interesting thing is they will only see the information they're supposed to see. So you could share this with 30, 40 people, and each recipient is only going to see the information they're supposed to see, because you can get very granular with the security profiles within Solver. So they may be only able to run it for one specific department or entity, maybe one region. Maybe you only allow them to run it for the actual scenario. You don't want them to be doing all of that scenario modeling, right? So again, do the report once, share it, your job's done. People can do their own analysis then moving forward and run it for whatever period, drill down, filter, etc. Okay, makes it really, really easy. Now, we talked earlier and we got a couple of good questions around the updating. I should also point out as well, as yes, you schedule those updates accordingly, but if you're in finance and you're doing month end, you want to make sure you're using the most up-to-date information, at which point those power users doing that will have the right to push an update as well. If you're doing financial close, you can actually push an update, so it'll bring across any of those incremental changes, just so that you know that you're working with the latest version of that information. Okay. So the other thing that's part of this is, as you would expect, there is a way to publish these reports on an automated basis if you want to. So for instance, this could be your monthly board pack, right? And this could be your reports for execs. You know, you can put your own descriptions in there. You determine what reports you want to include on this pack. You determine who's going to receive it, how it's going to be delivered. Now, I'm going to show you how you can have it delivered into an exec's archive in Solver, which is a really cool way of doing it. I'll show you why. But you can also have it outputted as a PDF or a static Excel spreadsheet. Okay, you can do that. You can put a message in here as optional, but you can. And then you can say, I want this to go out every month, last day at this time. And that will send the email out to whoever's receiving it, management, board members, say, hey, you've got a new report pack, briefing pack available. Click here, and away you go. And if I go into my archive, I'll give you an example of what that can look like. This is a very simple one. John will tell you we have some customers doing some really cool things with board packs. So you can have all your logo, branding, table of contents, look really, really nice. This is a simple one just to illustrate today. But you can see I've got a summary page here. This is giving me what we call an auto narrative. Really, really cool. So if you're spending time month to month actually taking data and actually putting that a meaningful narrative around it, this is going to do it for you. So you notice you build drivers into your report, and you notice it's automatically telling me the profitability this month was great. This was the income compared to last year. This was our best customer, best performing program. This was our largest payment, etc. And then, of course, as part of this, you can include all of the supporting material, right? All as part of these packs. And again, these can be outputted via PDF if you want them to. Make them look however you want. Okay. You can even use this archive, and this is why it's worth having it published to the archive, as you can even use this to store executed versions of a report as well. So for instance, you could come in here and at any point in time, you can open up a couple of different versions of reports, right? You can have a look at them side by side if you want to, right? And do that. You can drill down still, even though they're an executed report, i.e. you can't change anything, can't change parameters, you can still drill down. And that's just a taste of some of the things you can do with that. There's lots of other stuff you can do as well. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to port back over here into report templates. I'll just show you another quick way that you might want to take advantage of. And that is within Solver, you have the ability to set up these tree structures and what we call dynamically expanding reports. So for instance, I've got a P&L report here for my Australian entity. But if I want to, you'll notice I've got these hierarchical tree structures. You can set up as many as you want. They can be as big as you want. It can be, as I say, manufacturing region, sales territories, anything. But I could run, this is an entity tree. So I could say, I want a consolidated view of my organization, at which point it will go out. And now it'll bring me back a consolidated report for each individual entity in an aggregate total. Okay. If you've got any complex consolidation processes within your organization, including intercompany eliminations, minority ownership calculations, etc., we can also handle that stuff as well within the Solver solution. Okay, I'm just looking at the clock, so still got a bit to cover. So I'm doing this at 1.5 speed. So forgive me. I think that's what Netflix called it. So I'm going to go to my ad hoc reporting tool, and I'm going to show you something that's really useful because everyone within your environment, whether they're a full Solver user or what we call a viewer, would get access to this. It doesn't mean you have to give them access, but from a licensing perspective, they would get it. And it's really useful because what it does is it allows everyone within the organization to run their own queries subject to their security profile. So for instance, if you're sharing all these formatted reports and it's not answering their questions, no problem. They can come in here and say, right, I want to query my revenues module. I want to see my account. I want to see my account description. Maybe I want to see my extended price refresh. Right, now I want to move that around. Okay, great. That gives me that information. Now maybe what I want to do is I want to do a pivot, and I maybe want to add in here, I'll add in entity. Refresh. So now I've got it by entity. Might want to move these around depending on how I want it laid out. So that's great. Now I've got that information. Now I can say, that's awesome. But what I want now is I want to automatically have it chart that for me. Don't like that though. So I'm going to look at something different. Maybe I'll look at that one, maybe that one, right? And I can keep building up this query. So I can go in here, I can add filters and all these different things to it, just keep building it and adding data to it, etc. And what I can do is I can save that. So for instance, if I want to run that query again in the future, I can do. But what you can do is if you find that a lot of people are running the same query, that may be a time to say, you know what, we may as well create a proper formal organizational report that we'll share with everyone because it's clearly useful. At which point you would be able to use this as the basis for that report. So you're kind of halfway there. All right, so you have that ability as well. This is really cool. And subject to your security, you can give everyone access to this. The best thing is though, again, based on their profiles, they'll only be able to click information that they're supposed to. Okay. So I'll say again, there's lots more you can do with the reporting side. But in the interest of time, I'm going to jump into the planning side because I think it's all connected, and this is obviously a key area for a lot of organizations that are typically reliant on Excel to take care of this. So I'm going to move down to my planning section. You'll notice if I select input templates, it looks very similar to the report templates up here. The key difference, these are all input forms. These are all budget and forecast input forms. And as I mentioned, you can do any type of planning within Solver, any type. So I've got CapEx, personnel, cash flow, project budgets. I've got everything in here for example purposes. But what the first thing you probably want to do, and I should add, yes, we have templates and things, and typically the Walker Scott team will work with these to tailor them to your specific needs. But we also find planning can be quite an involved process, and there'll be specific things that you want to capture. So typically they'll create a lot of these templates for your organization based on your specific needs. That illustrates the flexibility of the product. But the idea behind this whole solution is once it's set up for you, you're self-sufficient. You shouldn't have to call Walker Scott or ourselves every time you want a little change doing. You should be able to handle this in-house, and that's one of the key advantages here. So if I go here, for instance, the first thing you probably want to do, and I'm guessing people on the call are already doing a form of this in Excel, is budget drivers or assumptions. The advantage here is you can set up as many assumptions as you want. These are global assumptions. And these are going, this particular assumptions form is going in to feed 5 or 6 different budget and forecast templates. You get full global control over this. So for instance, you could come down here, you got CPI, payroll, travel, working days, etc. And you could look at this CPI increase and you could say that 1.8 is very low right now. I'm going to bump that up to 5 or 6%. But here, you haven't got to worry about people using different versions of forms and things. You can just say, great, I want to bump it to 6%. I only want it to apply to this version of the budget or forecast. And I only want it to apply from this specific period. And then you can go ahead and what that means is you haven't got to worry about making sure that sheets are updated, people are using the right ones. It gives you global control. And if you really wanted to, you could workflow this. So if you need to get buy-in from stakeholders, you can actually workflow it and get it reviewed and approved. So that's the first thing you'd probably do. And then depending on how many are involved in the process, you'd probably want to set up a workflow. So you come in here and this could be your, let's do something easy. This could be our annual expenses budget. We're a bit late, 2024. All right. You can have as many of these as you want, and you determine the assignment window. So you say, I want this process to start from, I'm going to start it from July, the 8th. I want this time, and I want it to be finished by August the 11th, right? So that's the window where everyone's got to contribute. And you don't have to do this, but you might want to. I want Archie to review everything. So when everything goes back, Archie will review it. Then if he's happy, I'm going to have it go on to Bud for approval. And then you would have all of your templates. These are all mine in the environment that I have. I'm just going to choose my expenses one. And then it'll say, do you want to fix it so they can only enter for these specific parameters? Or you may have someone that enters budgets for more than one department, entity, region, at which point you can say, let the user decide. But remember, they can only decide based on their security profile. This is the advantage of everything under one roof. So if I can enter for department A and B, I can view reports for department A and B, right? So it all flows through. I'm just going to fix it for today's example. And I'm going to do it by role or user again. I'm going to do it by user. Okay, and I can publish that. So on the 7th of August, they're going to get an email saying, hey, you've got a new budget or forecast assignment. You need to start the process. Click the link. And then if I change from a budget manager to a contributor perspective, they will click that link and it will take them into their assignments. And I've got lots of assignments because I'm playing multiple roles, but you can see I've got some I haven't started, some in progress, some awaiting approval, right? If it was just 1 or 2 they had, they'd just see that not started, okay? I'm gonna open up this expenses one. And you can see this is a simple one for the sake but of today's session. But again, John's and his team can get into a lot more detail here around specific budget and forecast requirements. But you'll see that anything that's yellow means I can enter information. Anything that's not means I can't. Okay, anything that's not yellow, I can't change it. But you'll also notice I've automatically got actuals coming in up to the relevant point, and I've got my remaining forecast showing as well. So as I go through here, I can simply, I can start entering in budget number pretty easy. I can start the process or continue the process. But I can also do a number of other things that I think everyone on the call will probably find of interest. For instance, if I go into this travel line, you'll notice I have this spreading and line item detail bar at the bottom. Interestingly, and I probably should have mentioned this at the outset when we were talking about data sources, but one of the other big things that we see a lot of is people wanting to bring their historical information into Solver. You might have 7+ years of data you want to bring in into the Solver environment for reporting and planning purposes. This is where that can come into play, because for this travel account, you can see I'm showing 2 previous years worth of data. I could show multiple years if I wanted to. But what that's giving me is my actuals for those years, and I can see the trend across each period. So right now, I can also create as much line item detail as I want under this travel line. So this could be events you're running. So it's, you're going over to Australia for some events that you could put, Sydney flights, right? Maybe you're sending the team 8,000 here. Maybe you're sending more people over here. Maybe you're doing something in NZ in Wellington or something, like monthly events. At which point you might say, yeah, we're doing these monthly, so we're gonna budget probably about, we'll say 85,000 for the year. But I want you to take last year's actuals, in this case 21, but I want you to take that previous year's actuals, and I want you to spread the 85,000 based on the trend distribution that we saw in the previous year. We can do that. Maybe you want to do that, but you want to offset. Maybe you're not doing those events Jan-March through March, at which point you can offset Jan, Feb, and March. You might simply say, take last year plus a percentage, whether that's percentage value or number of units. You can even create your own distribution methods as well. You may be a seasonal business or retail, agriculture. You can create your own distribution methods. Or you could simply say, you know what, take it, spread it evenly across the 12-month period. And you'll notice now that it spreads it across and it's rolled up in January and it's rolled up in August. I also have the ability to do line item commentaries. So I can put, it's a big number, I've agreed it with marketing already. But when people review this form, the red indicator is illustrating that there is underlying detail for review. And a red indicator in the line item detail is telling you there's commentary to review as well. But you could also go as far as including department level commentary. And you also have a full activity log as well. This is, again, one of the bugbears we hear a lot of, the whole process, the back and forth. Here, you can keep it all under the one roof, whereby you can search. You can say, show me keywords based on this stage of the budget when it was in its review stage. You can see who said what, when they said it, what time they said it, and it's all there as part of the process. So I could do 2 things now. I can save this, which means I'm going to come back to finish it later, or I can complete the assignment. If I complete the assignment, a notification is going to go off to the reviewer or the approver, depending on how you've set it up, to say Scott completed his assignment. They can then review it. They might reject it. If they reject it, they'll want to put in here why it was rejected. I'll get a notification back. I can go in, I can read the comments why, make changes, resubmit with my own comments. So the whole thing is workflowed, so everyone is kept up to speed each step of the way. That means if you go back to a budget manager role, that at any point in time, you can come in here and you could say, I want to get a real-time view of where everyone is at with the process. And this comes in really handy, especially if you have multiple assignments and multiple people contributing. This is where you have that challenge of spreadsheets flying around an organization. Here, I can easily see, and I can filter, I can go, show me how people are doing with CapEx. Show how everyone's doing with personnel. How's Bud doing? Who hasn't started? Everyone started, great. What's in progress? Right? You can set these filters up so that at any step of the way, you know exactly where everyone's at. All right. So the whole process is, to say, centralized, kept within the environment. All data is stored securely into that data warehouse. You can go back to it at any point in the future. If you want to take this an even step further, you can go as far as to use our process manager, where you can actually define all of your organizational processes around reporting and budgeting, right? So budget process, I can set up each step of the budget process. Maybe we see this a lot with not-for-profits organizations. You might have some organizational documentation that people need to read. You can put a link into that documentation so they can read it. You can assign it, and you can put a due date, and then they can give it the tick to say that they've read it. But you'll see that you can keep building up these processes We have a number of templates, right? But you can create your own. It's entirely up to you. Again, it's taking back control of that process. All right, even down to the month-end reporting process, right? You define that whole month-end reporting process as well if you want, if you're going to assign it to, etc., etc. All right, all within this environment. So that's kind of a lot that we covered in the short space of time. Takeaways were ease around the quick start integration to get you up and running quickly. The template marketplace with all of those reports available out of the box for Business Central customers. The ability to create whatever reports you want, ad hoc queries, board packs, all available and all designed to be self-service. And then, of course, your whole planning processes. That was an easy one, but there are many other different, obviously, types of planning that we can do within the product. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to see if there's any questions that you've seen come up, John.
Awesome. No questions as yet, so I'll just open it up for the next minute or so. Does anyone have any specific questions or chat? Just while you guys are doing that, thanks, Scott, for your time. I hope that's given some people an overview in terms of the look and feel of Solver and how it can potentially be used, especially around how users can actually self-serve and do their own reporting. So what we find now is a lot of people come with a list of reports to say, hey, we need to replicate these reports, and they might come from different data sources. And typically what we do now is when we implement Solver, because that reporting tool allows users to create their own reports, a lot of those reports which are requirements for particular projects, those kind of just go back on to the business once they have the training, and they just start creating their own reports. And I think what we're finding, which is of great value, is people are actually able to ask their own questions now. So it's not only are they subjected to just the reports that they get given, or maybe the reports that they are using, but they can actually dive a little bit deeper into the data. So that's what we're finding a lot of value, which has been driven. So yeah, so thanks, Scott, appreciate it.
No, not a problem.
Just for everyone to know, we're going to upload this webinar to our YouTube channel. As soon as I have that uploaded, I'll send out another email to everyone so you guys can get the link. And if you want to rewatch it, you want to share it, or give it to other people in your organization, then you'll at least have that link there. I think we have one question.
Just had a question pop up around
what
pricing.
sort of cost are we looking at for a smallish entity? Okay, good question. I'd say probably at minimum is around sort of a $20,000 implementation. So what happens is we provision Solver provisions an environment. Once that goes through, we then do the base installation, and then really we then work with you to a large part of it is around training. So training you how to actually develop reports. We do this. We normally take a report that you guys would like to do, and we train you on that. So we try and replicate that report within Solver. And then the rest of the training is really just getting you guys familiar with the product so you can actually generate your own reports, because just like Scott was saying a little bit earlier, we want you guys to be self-sufficient. And so, yeah, it's all really about just giving you the tools to enable you to create your own reports. Yeah.
Yeah, and just spot on there, and that I think that's the best approach. That's we like the way that you guys do that in terms of getting your customers up to speed and self-sufficient as quick as possible, because that's obviously super important. I'd also say as well on the licensing side, again, very transparent, all-inclusive licensing. Typically for a Solver user, it's $130 per user per month. For a Solver user, and $15 per user, for a viewer. So $130 for a Solver viewer, $15 for a Solver viewer per month. And we do a minimum annual subscription in advance. So very easy for everyone on the call to calculate that out. And
Yeah, actually,
Work
so
out
thanks for
costs.
saying that, because that 20,000 that I said was that's including your licensing for 1 year. So the rest of that money is really training you and getting you onto the product.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just a couple of questions. So one is just from Joanne. So she's saying, if we have a current Excel report template, plain format and formula to solve it and manage them from there.
Sorry,
So
John, you dropped out the first part of the question. Mate.
sorry, so she's saying, if we have a current Excel report template, would it be easy to import the same format and formula to Solver and manage them from there?
Yeah, so there's if you like the look and feel and everything of the report, there's nothing stopping you replicating that report in Solver. It wouldn't be so much as an import. We'd have to design it and create it within Solver, but that wouldn't necessarily be a big deal. But you wouldn't necessarily import it in. You would just create that same report within the Solver environment. But again, it's not a big challenge. It isn't. So the short answer, I guess, is yes. It's just a different way in which we get there.
Cool. Just one from Caroline. So would we need both Power BI and Solver, or can Solver fully replace Power BI? Okay, I'll take this one, and then you can.
No, man, you go.
This is just my personal opinion, and maybe Scott will disagree. But to me, I see Solver as a great financial tool. And Power BI a very good operational tool for dashboarding. So the great thing about Solver is that when you take it, it comes with a data warehouse. You don't have to do any of that legwork behind the scenes to sort of get your chart of accounts in there, along with all your dimensions and so forth. It's just you get that with the product. With Power BI, you have to build a lot of that stuff in the background in order to actually achieve just the base install that you get with Solver. So to me, I find if it's financial reporting that you after, I think Solver is a great tool for that, especially when it comes to budget and forecasting. But if Power BI, if it's really operationally that you want to view your data, I think Power BI is the better tool. Scott, I don't know if you've got anything different.
Yeah, we see it as it's a complementary solution, as you mentioned, John. We can connect into Power BI from Solver. I'll give you an example where Power BI and Solver come in really handy. We've got some customers in the distribution logistics space, and they have big TVs up in their warehouse with what's going on a fairly real-time basis. And for that, you would typically use Power BI, of course, because you want a dashboard that's going to constantly update. You wouldn't use a formatted report for that. But what those guys are doing is they're using the benefits of the Solver data warehouse and having all your data there with all of the connections, etc., and just exposing that to Power BI. So as John said, there's things that Solver's better at and things that Power BI is better at. But either way, you don't necessarily need to choose either or. They kind of work together.
All the same, yeah.
Complementary.
Yeah. Cool. Just one from Roll. So you mentioned about the additional column for the URL link of the invoice, which takes to Business Central. Do we need to set up users in BC in order for them to view the invoice?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not going to get into how you would absolutely do that because I don't know the ins and outs. I'll be honest. That would be one for John and the consulting team.
I can answer. Yeah, I can answer that one. So,
you know that
yes,
one.
you
Sorry,
do.
mate.
Yeah. So you would need at minimum a team member license in order to do that. Yeah. And then Jane, is it fully integrated with BC? Quick answer to that is yes, fully integrated. So it's built for BC along with other solutions, but yes, comes out the box with BC integration. Next one, can we customize the default drill down?
You can. The short answer to that is you can create any type of drill down or drill through that you want to within a report. And you can determine who gets access to that via the security settings. In terms of exactly what you want to do, maybe that's a question we can take offline. The short answer is yeah, you can create any, but there may be more to that question. I'm interested in the intent of the question because there may be something there that we need to understand. Short answer is yes, but again, probably a discussion to be had there.
Cool. Good. Those are all good questions. So thanks everyone.
Yeah, got some good ones, didn't we? It's
yeah.
a slow burn, and then they all come thick and fast.
Oh, we got another. So Jane said, have any New Zealand companies or yes, plenty
for
do.
sure.
Yeah, and we've done a
Oh,
lot
absolutely.
we've done a lot of deployments here in New Zealand. Walker Scott has. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. What if anyone else is interested, got more questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. I will, so it's just John, so JOHN .mellows@walkerscott.co. I'll put it in here in the chat, but I'll be sending out an email to everyone just to with the link to the webinar. If you've got any more questions around Solver, please just shout out, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or give you more information about it. But yeah, thanks, Scott, again. Thanks for everyone for attending. I know everyone's very busy, and I really do appreciate your time. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.